we've seen that CTV is growing from a consumer point of view. There's a lot of projections on revenue growth. Even within your presentation, Grant, we're using the word measurement in a myriad of different ways.
Yes.
I'd like to maybe just chat to the panel, and maybe start with Brett on this. When we're talking measurement for CTV, what are we talking? Are we talking ads? Are we talking audience? Are we talking impact? Are we talking all of it? Are we getting ourselves too confused already?
Yeah, well, it's a good question because people don't usually draw the line between measurement and evaluation. And what a lot of people's starting point is evaluation of campaigns is important. It is the main goal in terms of if you're a CMO, you want to know whether you're either making sales or whether you're actually changing people's minds. And that's what measurement's for, is to sort of lean into those two things. But for CTV, we haven't got there. I mean, we just heard Grant say that it's quite broken, to be honest with you. And we need to, there's no gold standard. When we look at television, we do see it, at Finecast, we certainly see this as a television environment. We see that the heritage of TV measurement is certainly with the OzTams of the world and the Barb. And we're seeing great strides with, I think it's called Dovetail in the UK, and here it's called VOZ, which we touched on. I think for us, the measurement of what will lead to those sort of outcomes and those the things that CMOs and sales and marketing officers care about will come from that type of measurement. That is a panel-based measurement at the minute, and we're seeing sort of, and Clive probably knows more about this than me, but we'll see that sort of roll out in Q1, which we're all sort of looking forward to. But again, that's for sort of incremental content at the minute. As an advertiser, I want to hear about, I used to want to hear about TARPs. If any old school TV buyers here will talk about TARPs. If you're in digital, you've probably not heard of that. But we want to hear about, who did we hit? And right now, when you look at addressable TV, you can actually go below buying metros, and you're invariably using data. And that sort of throws even panel-based measurement into sort of a world of hurt, because panels generally aren't big enough to get quite granular around data.
Clive, from a broadcaster point of view, do we need to start with that broader piece and then move forward, or...?
Look, I think it's important to acknowledge what's already been achieved, so it's important to acknowledge what's already been achieved, and there's much more alignment in the Australian market than anywhere in the world, actually. Public television, paid television, free-to-air broadcast television, and that's coming up to a third year of alignment in January around that. The challenges are as I've described, and the co-viewing factor is something that's really important never to underestimate, because there's always going to need a panel for co-viewing. There is no way that, the majority of connected TV consumption is not a one-to-one experience. So that's something that we'll get from the panel, and whether the panel is administered via some electronic measurement in the home, or whether it's manually administered. And so all connected TV consumption is massively underreported at the moment, because it's assuming a co-viewing of 0.98, when it's probably up to 1.4 or higher. When was the last time you sat down in front of a connected TV to watch a show on your own? You do on your phone, you do on your iPad, and you do on your PC, but you don't on your TV very often. And so hybridizing measurement is something that's really important. Bringing it back to people is going to be really important, and that's where VOZ and VPN will hopefully work together. So VPN is in tens of millions of Australian devices today as an SDK, and then VOZ will hybridize that with the critically important Google metric. But the other factor that we're also thinking about is actually not just being a TV at all, being a computer on the wall of the living room that's probably going to be increasingly controlled by your voice. So actually the measurement piece that we're talking about today isn't really just about how television has changed. This is how the internet is going to change, and how the role of the computer on the wall, and how you will interact with that computer on the wall for all content booking your holiday, opening your bank account, buying your products. And actually, most people just think of it stopping and starting around digital video, whether it's Netflix or YouTube, whether it's 7 Plus or 9 Now. But actually, it's going to be the computer on the wall. So making it even more important, the collaboration around measurement being so critical, because people will be buying things via voice and touch on their computers on the wall pretty soon. And then that key point around attribution will become increasingly important.
Julia, you sit between both worlds, I guess, broadcaster and, the market. You and I have frequent conversations on this. Do you think we're heading in the right direction? The steps that we're taking, are we fulfilling the needs of buyers?
We are. So I take a slightly more optimistic view. I don't think it is broken. I think we've achieved quite a lot over a very short period of time. We are just very impatient. We want this to be really successful yesterday. And so we need to just recognise that we have achieved a huge amount already. Over the past, so we work with a good number of broadcasters across the region. We work with 7 and 9 and 10, SBS, Foxtel. So we're working very closely with a huge amount of connected TV supply. A couple of years ago, we were really struggling to get anybody to pay attention and to actually buy into that medium, whereas now we're seeing considerable investment across a whole range of brands in connected TV. So we've already made a lot of progress. In terms of measurement, Clive has just gone into some of the details about why it's so complex. Looking at the TV as a computer throws up so many questions. We're saying that OzTAM, VPN and VOZ is really exciting, but if we're actually saying that it's a computer rather than a TV, and we're actually saying that there could be OzTAM measurement against TV, but there would potentially be Nielsen DAR against anything that's digital outside of that TV, then you've got two conflicting measurement systems. So all of the opportunity and the growth and the evolution and the audience trends actually just show how complex this is. And in my opinion, that means that we need an evolution of measurement as opposed to just one fix that is going to fix everything in perpetuity that's going to be in place immediately. So in terms of the measurement that we look at, I personally think we need to be looking at streams as well as individuals. We need to be looking at minutes, which I think is a really great insight into engagement. We need to recognise the difference between TV and digital video. I loved the presentation earlier, but I do have a bit of a problem with lumping all digital video into one compartment, because I don't think that UGC is the same as BVOD, for example. In addition, and I think I'm going on a bit of a rant.
It's not like you.
But in addition, at the moment, we are having to talk about BVOD. We're having to sort of compartmentalise things a lot at the moment, when actually we'd love to just be talking about TV. When people are watching programmes that they love, they don't really care whether it's delivered through the internet or not, whether it's on their phone here or whether it's on a TV screen. It's just TV, it's shows, it's entertainment, it's something that people are choosing to watch. At the moment, in this sort of environment, the only reason that we're having to compartmentalise everything is because there are so many nuances and there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution to these different devices. But we're working through them. We've made a lot of headway. A couple of years ago, you'd be seeing back-to-backs across everything that you were watching on a connected TV. We started working very closely with publishers to ensure that that user experience is improved, and that doesn't happen anymore. At least it's very rare that happens these days. So user experience absolutely has to be focused on, so that we can grow this entity, so that we can move towards something that is far more sort of TV-like as opposed to fragmented.
Thank you for that. So I guess going back to some of the earlier point, talking about sort of simplifying everything, if I'm an advertiser at the moment, I'm probably terrified of all of this. How do we make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that we have in digital to an extent, and be able to, while we need to do the heavy lifting, the hard work, the stuff to get it right, how do we communicate the benefits in a cleaner, clearer way? Grant, have you seen any narrative in the US that's sort of talking to, the impact and the actual benefit of CTV or OTT? Sure.
I mean, everyone's trying to make that case to the advertiser, the marketer, but it's really problematic when you can't even figure out how many people are actually being delivered that message. And so in the US, at least, there is a massive fill rate issue because of the inability to target the users specifically. And so, it's something that as the consumption continues to increase and TV continues to decline in terms of viewership, the balance of where the money's or where the budget's coming in is difficult. And so they're trying to create their own independent methodologies. And so each marketer has to go to NBC, ABC, Fox, and CBS, and all the other cable companies, and they have to do each individual methodology, which is very confusing for a marketer. And so, that's where I see a lot of the problems, and that's where I'm kind of asking for the industry to kind of come together. I think the IAB and the IFA is a really good first step in trying to figure out and put frequency caps, because that's a massive problem that needs to be solved for.
And that sort of comes back to that point of the difference of content and ad will get increasingly different in terms of how we, the numbers will look different.
Yeah, and some of the cable companies have been successful in kind of showing the research that they've done on the effectiveness of the CTV specifically. And they've been able to work with advertisers in pushing more budget into those channels. But those advertisers then have to trust the measurability or the kind of methodology that the publisher is using.
For the local guys, I guess, which verticals and advertisers are really jumping in here and I guess making that leap to throw a lot of their budget into the CTV space?
What we find is interesting, if the buy is more related to the television team, then they are very happy to take the current data available, because the point you made around not having viewability scores for broadcast TV, you don't need to have a viewability score for connected TV ad experience. But if it's a checkbox on a digital buy, then and therefore the computer says no, then logic unfortunately doesn't win out, just the checkbox wins out. So it's actually not about brands, it's about which media agency they've chosen to be represented, and obviously the fact that we have Finecast means that Group M are the most leaned in on the opportunity, and I love the approach to market of Finecast, and in particularly the way that the geographic targeting and the overlaying of the segments that Group M can bring to their clients in that way, in terms of saying you can buy TV on a geographical basis, but you can buy connected TV much tighter and then start to look at suburbs. And we all know about where suburbs will go in location is not just about the value of our homes. It also says so much about how we live. So you can see there that that's a very smart way of bringing data into connected TV that is based around how we live, because the TV is fixed. But back to your question, actually, apart from giving Group M that call out, it really, if you're working in a brand environment, it simply comes down to whether the agency can decide where the buying of it sits, and certain agencies really go down that checkbox route, and others are much more willing to accept that it's just television in a different way. And the other thing I just want to highlight is we've seen unbelievable growth, and I was just checking your growth stats with my strategy director over here, and we've seen like 200% growth in the last 9 months on connected TV. So tripling over 2 years as an average, and 200% in the last 9. So it's accelerating. And we had our highest ever day yesterday, and it will be our highest ever day tonight. And it's not because we're smart or clever, it's just because the market is moving so fast, unbelievably fast. But the thing that we actually massively underestimated is the amount of live streaming that's happening on a connected TV. People think this is ridiculous to debate about VOD versus linear TV. No, it's not about that at all. People are choosing to watch our live channels streamed on connected TVs, even if they have an aerial, a satellite, or a cable. This is not some sort of Netflix versus linear moment. It's way too simplistic, and we are massively, and that's not just sport.
The number one live stream show last night was Pride and Prejudice, which which was available on demand on broadcast, number one live stream show, because it's about the consumer who find that observational show very appealing, and the fact that they just want to use the internet for everything, and going back to a traditional distribution method is like, why would I want to do that? I use the internet for everything, and that's an interesting opportunity as well, because so much of the connected TV discussion is just so wrongly centered around VOD versus linear, and that is really, really mistaken.
Okay, and talking, I guess, of limiting what we're talking about, we talk, obviously, Clive, you're representing the BVOD market, which I think you were the one who sort of dragged the industry to use that term. There's obviously other stuff going on, ad-supported stuff going on connected TV, and will increase. Are we creating another world where we're looking, so if we look at YouTube versus BVOD versus whatever comes next in terms of ad-supported on connected TV, are we creating measurement worlds that are actually going to talk to each other?
Critically, we have to. BVOD wasn't a term that I brought to market. It was a British term that actually Nine was more championing. I was actually a little bit more concerned about it, actually, because I felt VOD actually didn't capture the live part of what we do. But actually, that didn't matter, and I was mistaken. But but we have to, for the benefit of our clients and agencies, we've got to get better at measuring. BVOD for us is about context. That's what really BVOD allows us to do, is to say that context matters. A live ad insertion into NRL or into a tennis match or into Home and Away is a different context than a live insertion ad into a UGC video, and I watch both. And that's why we created it. We didn't create it to confuse methodology. We just tried to ensure that people understand the context matters around where your ad is seen. But to go back to your question, further collaboration is absolutely critical, particularly if my view that the television becomes a computer on the wall for everything. And it's really interesting. And I'm a massive fan of YouTube. We work very closely with Google, but it's interesting to read some of their senior leadership blogs at the moment, because they're slightly conflicted about this, right? Because they're such a mobile-first company, and a brilliant one at that. But YouTube's fastest-growing device is connected TV, and if you read, Susan's blog notes, it's like they try and work out how they actually say it's the fastest-growing device without actually saying that mobile's more important, because they're a mobile-first company. And of course, it's not important, because when you sit down and watch your connected TV with your mobile in the hand, so no one really does this with their phone. We'd love to, we think we do, but we don't, and we hold it, and actually they're both working in synergy together. And the earlier colleague around how powerful search is because it's often happening in front of the connected TV or in the TV. So, but we've got to get better proving all that out, and we're really at sort of day one on that, I think.
But I'd be interested in your opinion in this. What does this CTV universe look like, and how do we ensure we don't have more whatever type of walled garden in terms of data?
I mean, walled gardens are quite topical at the minute. Going back a step actually to the previous question, I'll come on to that, but was what type of buyers are looking at CTV. As Clive was mentioning, TV buyers don't worry about viewability on a television. So TV buyers are more likely to buy, and we've actually, just to put our hands up, Group M in a digital sense are the people who check the box on viewability. They're only on devices that, you can scroll, or you can flick away advertising and things like that. So that's critically important. And if we had our time over, we would not change that. But when we built the Finecast ecosystem around BVOD and around the television device, and we talked to TV buyers, the two things that they know work is, one is television works. And if you bring to market a product that is like television on BVOD, 100% viewable, unskippable ads in a living room, people are going to trust that environment. And measurement starts to go down a little bit. Your sort of risk meter goes down a little bit when you're in those environments. So for us, putting that ecosystem together, not technically not a walled garden. And in terms of data availability, again, because we operate on the TV device, we don't go for personalised data sets because, again, I can't believe I'm saying Clive's right all the time, but it is not a data set that you would see just for an individual. We use predominantly household data sets to segment televisions all over Australia, and have been very successful at a whole range of tactics, not just reach, which is what most buyers want. Segmentation, even hyper-targeting using offline data sets, and also response. When you can actually target down to a few different suburbs, you can get response type effects that make a difference. And I mean, we've got clients that the only thing in their plan that is actually proven is TV. So if you then bring a product to market that is like TV, people tend to trust that. And especially when you can actually start buying now in a much more targeted way using the data that's available, you start to get very interesting results at that lower level. And it actually brings forward buyers of television that have never been there before. You can access point for television is coming down, and the quality is if you play in the right spaces, the quality is amazing. And you get people who are super luxury watch brands and things like that is just simply not as effective to actually run that across a broad metro buy, coming to television now to say, actually, I want to buy highly affluent households in the environments that actually make a difference, which is the BVOD market.
Actually, sorry, I was going to say, so in terms of walled gardens, each of the publishers that we work with have their own data strategy, essentially. So we've integrated DMPs across the Quark's Low-to-Me, the Adobe DMP, so that we can ingest that data and so that we can segment and supply in order to make specific segments available to buyers. So essentially that means that each of the publishers have got their own specific strategy, and that's exactly as it should be. Each broadcaster has worked very hard to bring in audiences, and they need to be responsible for the data that they're bringing in. The bit that's missing, though, is just that measurement piece. It's the verification, it's third-party verification to recognise the quality of that data that was brought in by each of those publishers and that was made available, whether it's first-party, second-party or third-party data. I think the really positive thing, though, in my mind, is that the publishers have now got the onus is on the publishers. In the past, targeting was really down to the DSP, just down to the buy side to bring that data in, and that was very difficult to scale across video. So now that data is held by the publishers, there's a huge amount more scale available, and that just takes us back then to saying that the verification piece needs to be very well thought through, considering that first-party data should in theory be incredibly accurate. How can third-party verification be just as accurate and valid and credible as first-party declared data?
So it sounds like moving forward, we need to do two parts of the puzzle, the industry side and the individual players.